it's actually possible to build or create a human brain?
Well, first of all, you have to have zero hobbies, okay? And then
So you think it's possible?
I think so, but it's not a bright side if you think about it. I mean, there's no cheerful sci-fi movie that I've seen about that specific topic.
Welcome to Intellect. And our first segment today is going to be Now You Know. And what a better topic to talk about than digging through the brain.
The human brain, one of our most complex organs, allows us to move, feel, think, and learn. Inside the brain, a dynamic network formed by billions of nerve cells processes information via electrical signals. Each neuron receives information from thousands of other neurons via multiple processes called dendrites and transmits information via a single axon. At specialized contact sites called synapses, electrical signals trigger the regulated release of neurotransmitters stored in synaptic vesicles. These chemical messengers bind and activate postsynaptic receptors, initiating a new electrical signal in the next cell.
So let's talk brain. Tell me what you got. What do you know?
A big brain, that's for a starter. And I know that we have a very gray area.
It is called gray area, gray matter.
Gray matter, yeah. And scientists until today, they have multiple theories on what does it do, what does it not do. Is it just a dormant area or not? Many
For some people, it's probably very dormant.
Yeah, the gray and the white and the active one, so it's all the same. But I like the supernatural theories. We can have telekinesis and telepath.
That maybe another time, but there's a lot of science that is possible. But one thing interesting, you talk about the size of the brain. You know, the brain is like only like about 1.5 kilos. But that small 1.5 kilos, that actually takes almost 20% of body energy just to power that thing.
Talk about a V8 engine, but a smaller size.
But another thing, maybe your brain is more than other brains, but you know, this is an interesting thing. Brain is about 60% fat, and out of that fat, 75% of that is actually water.
So what about behavior? Is there a difference in the behavior?
There is, absolutely, there's difference in behavior. You know, this is the thing about the brain, which is, I'm very, you know, if you look at it, if you read anything in science and things like that, they equate the complexity of the brain and the neurons. There's like 100 billion neurons, and the connections they make are in the trillions. So the only thing in the universe that is equal to the complexity of the brain is actually the universe. So it's very complex subject. But so any imbalance, you can have somebody that is really happy, really sad, really a completely different personality just on their brain, like, or an injury or something like that. But there is one thing I want to share with you. I'm sure if you know this. Of course, there's a lot of different complexities in the brain, but I'm just going to simplify it to 3 areas. There is the first part, which is the oldest part, like in evolution, the first part that developed, which a lot of people, there's the limbic part, or in some books they call it the lizard brain or the monkey brain, and that is predominantly associated with instinct. For example,
The survival instinct.
Survival instinct, fear. It tries to protect you for anything bad. So, for example, and then there's the next brain, which is, or I forget the name, but it's the top of your head. This is involved with automatic action. So if you're going to do something, if you do it repeatedly, then your brain moves it to that section, so you do it without even thinking. But the brain that we're currently speaking through, which is the neocortex, in some books or some people they refer to as the human, that's where your personality sits, where your intellect sits, and that's the front part of your brain. So, for example, there are certain tasks that we do on a daily basis, and once you do it long enough, it takes a lot of processing, but the brain moves it to the other part of your brain where it automatically does. So my question, you came here today for our show. Do you remember how you got here in your car?
I think I was on autopilot since this morning.
Sometimes I'm like driving, I'm going someplace else, but all of a sudden I'm at home. I don't even remember taking the turns, and that's the automatic part. It just does, it remembers things, and it makes you, so it doesn't take a lot of processing time.
It's doing a lot of work for you while you're chilling back and
taking it
having
easy.
your phone calls. Yeah. And surprisingly, some cars have like autopilot or whatever, but you're already in an autopilot mode, but you don't know it. Organically.
You would actually go crazy if you had to think about everything. So the brain, have you ever learned about learning a new skill? At the beginning, how is it? Like I'm learning guitar or something like that.
It's very hard.
It's a lot of variables.
Yeah, there's so many complex, so many barriers, and then your hand finds its way, and then your ear is synchronized with both sides. But this much power, I think, because it's draining a lot of power. So naturally,
That's why when people read a lot or they think like do math problems, they're so exhausted because it takes a lot of energy to power that thing.
it reboots itself.
Tell me.
That's why we sleep. So in the book, Why We Sleep, most people, they think that we sleep because we need our body to rest. But actually, is that what's going on? I'm going to simplify it. All your activity during the day is going into the RAM memory. And this RAM has a limit. So once it's full, the brain wants to shift it into the hard drive. So the minute you sleep, this process happens. The shifting from the RAM until the hard drive.
So what you're saying, if I got you right, that means if you don't sleep, that means you tend to forget more things?
You tend to forget. And this is why if sometimes you sleep for 2 hours, you wake up very fresh for 24 hours. Sometimes you sleep for 9 hours, or you wake up in a grumpy mood, exhausted. Why? Because the process
didn't finish, or?
Yes, and it was interrupted. So the brain goes into a spiral of complex neurons. You wake up and, like, I'm not gonna say the word, worst mood ever.
You know, it's interesting you say that. I find this, when I'm tired, I'm agitated.
That's why you sleep. But because you're not moving your body parts, your muscle relax. So the heart moves slower because there's no physical activity. You wake up, you feel, my body's rested, but that happened because the brain, during the shift, your body did not move.
You know, I remember reading some part about that is when you're actually sleeping and you're in deep sleep, what happens in deep sleep? You're dreaming a lot. So there's a lot of activities during that process. But what your body does is to protect you, it paralyzes your body, so you don't move actually. Because if imagine you're dreaming, some people that sleepwalk, it's very dangerous actually. So your body actually inhibits that.
It goes into 4D mode. They're walking around, chilling, like sleeping zombies, you know?
That's I was just thinking about that. I don't know like why sometimes when you're sleeping, it's really hard to move. Maybe that's the body forcing me to be in bed. Yeah.
We're in the process of moving things. Don't move, okay? We're in it. So that's why you have to finalize the process of the transfer from the RAM onto the hard drive, and then you're gonna have a better day.
So that's that's really interesting. It's a great way to start a program. Now you know, Shahabi.
क्या हुआ बेसा?
कैसा है?
कैसा है?
Okay.
MashaAllah.
And for our next segment with Barak and Mbarak's journey. Mubarak al-Rashid, a typical 38-year-old Kuwaiti citizen. For the first glimpse, you can't deny it. He got it all. The looks, the traditional uniform, the whole charade. What's untold here is that he can speak Indian fluently.
हैदराबाद बागुन्नारा बागुन्ना बाय बाय मिस गुड नाइट कल फिर मिलेंगे हाँ सॉन्ग नहीं चाहिए मेरे सपनों की रानी कब आएगी तू आए रुत मस्तानी कब आएगी तू मुसाफिर हूँ यारो
You have YouTube channel?
हाँ हाँ यूट्यूब
What is the name?
किशोर कुमार
Sure, Kumar.
सलाम अलैकुम क्या करती है आपका सामान मेरा सामान लोता दो आप काम क्या है मसूद अशरफ माशाल्लाह आप इंडिया या पाकिस्तान इंडिया हाँ कौन सी जगह दरभंगा बिहार द सुपरस्टार शत्रुघ्न सिन्हा खामोश और आपके साथी नाम क्या है हाँ हुसैन माशाल्लाह राजस्थान ओ आयो रे ना 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 ना
Oh, I forgot to tell you folks, he got that Pakistani twist too.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम जनाब की हाल है की हाल चाल है लाहौर लगती लाहौर दिया पहचाना मुझको मैं कौन हूँ
आप एक फेमस है
मशहूर आदमी है
मशहूर पेड़
हाँ मशहूर है कुवैत मशहूर का आपका नाम क्या है
लाहौर से
आपका नाम अदनान माशा अदनान सामी हाँ भीगी भीगी रातों ने अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह हबीबी वो तो चाहिए ओके एक शर्त है अगली बार मैं साफ करूँगा मुफ्त पैसा नहीं दूंगा
It's astonishing how human brains develop, like a mind's mechanism to absorb certain interests and turn it into a sculpted form of art. A Kuwaiti Indian singer.
When I was young, usually I came here to buy many cassettes for many movies, old movies, Amitabh Bachchan, like this, Dharmender. So, and I'm a big fan of Kishore Kumar. He's the big singer in India. He's the legend. Kishore Kumar, Muhammad Rafi Sahab. So, it's really very nice moments.
बहुत खुशी है हमारे साथ में
बहुत खुशी है खुशी वाला बड़ा बहुत सारा खुशी
एक गाना को हमारी लिए पे
किच्चा सुदीप से बात किया ना मेरा गाँव वाला है
वल्ला
किच्चा सुदीप
बैंगलोर कनाडा
from Bangalore
उसी रे की उसी न कुल्ल बेड़ा
जय कर्नाटका
जय कर्नाटका कितना पागल है ये प्यार से करना है बरसामने जब तुम आते हो कुछ भी गैलेक्सी देता है ओ मेरे गैलेक्सी ओ मेरे आईफोन
इंशाल्लाह आईफोन देगा तुमको जरूर देगा
The director said, I didn't think he's that famous until...
वनकम मद्रास हे पकदुम कता हे नने कता तेरे नरे कने take me
Even his significant other had their part. Frankly, she didn't particularly know him. Still, her joy to interact with a Kuwaiti citizen in her mother tongue, just priceless.
पटुआ आपका पटुआ पैसा है क्या ओ वैक्सीन दे दे हाँ हो गया हो गया किधर यहाँ वहाँ इधर चला मैं उधर चला बाहर यहाँ का रास्ता नहीं है रास्ता दो रास्ता में तो हाँकने नहीं लड़ी है सलाम अलैकुम पेलपुरी हाँ पेलपुरी दाल से दाल मिला हो सलाम अलैकुम ओ पुलिस वाला सलाम पुलिस
And we were lucky enough to have a side talk with Mr. Jangir.
तो आपका कुवैत इंडिया से क्या रिश्ता है
और इंडिया में बहुत अच्छा रिश्ता है जैसे कि फ्रेंडशिप का रिश्ता है ऐसे काम भी बहुत अच्छा इधर आया हम लोग काम करने के लिए भाई भाई की तरह चलता है। कुवैती लोग बहुत अच्छा है, इंडियन लोगों को बहुत अच्छा करके देख रहा है, काम भी नौकरी में काम में बहुत अच्छा कर रहा है, ये बहुत अच्छा है। हमारा सोच में जितना हम देखा है उतना ही बहुत अच्छा है।
तो आप कितने साल है यहाँ कुवैत में?
मैं 14 साल हुआ कुवैत में आया
हाँ
हूँ।
माशाल्लाह 14 साल।
14 साल।
आपकी उम्र?
मेरा उम्र नियर देन
हाँ ओके
50 साल की जैसा।
हाँ माशाल्लाह। तो आपका क्या लगता है लाइक आपका जज्बात यहाँ कुवैत से इंडिया से जज्बात तो कल्चर है क्या कहना चाहते हैं आप कुवैत से?
मैं कहना चाहता हूँ कि कुवैत और इंडिया का जैसे कि ऐसा अच्छा रिश्ता है
हाँ
और अच्छा फ्रेंडशिप भी है,
हाँ हाँ
बिजनेस में भी है, काम में भी है, मतलब सब कुछ में बहुत अच्छा है।
हाँ हाँ
लोग जो है इधर का लोग भी बहुत अच्छा है, बिजनेस बहुत अच्छा है, हम लोग को देखना है
हाँ
और बातचीत में बिजनेस में सब कुछ में बहुत अच्छा है।
अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह।
सब में बहुत अच्छा है।
यहाँ सब कुवैत से आप आराम से
हो
कानून या
फिर कानून बहुत अच्छा है,
बहुत अच्छा है।
बहुत अच्छा है कुवैत का कानून को हम बहुत रेस्पेक्ट करता हूँ। कुवैत का कानून जैसे भी वो लोग कानून कर रहा है हमारे लिए बहुत अच्छा है, अच्छा कर रहा है। जैसे कि अभी जो वैक्सीन दिया है किधर बिल भी दे रहा है, इधर हम सब लोगों का खलास हो गया वैक्सीन।
तो क्या कहना आप चाहिए आखिरी सवाल?
मैं तो ये कहना चाहूँगी कि इधर में जो इधर का लोग है, जो इधर का करेंसी है बहुत अच्छा है एंड वर्ल्ड में ये कंट्री बहुत डेवलपमेंट है, बहुत रिच है, काम करने के लिए भी बहुत अच्छा है। इधर का लोगों के साथ कंधा मिला के काम कर सकता है, कोई मुश्किल नहीं है।
थैंक यू भाई, अब मुझे आप खुशी मुलाकात है। थैंक यू माय फ्रेंड, थैंक यू सो मच, शुक्रिया।
Our team would like to thank Mr. Jangir for his hospitality, warmth, and wonderful smile.
हर दीवानो मुझे पहचानो, कहाँ से आया मैं हूँ कौन। हर दीवानो मुझे पहचानो, कहाँ से आया मैं हूँ कौन। मैं हूँ डॉन, मैं हूँ डॉन, मैं हूँ डॉन।
So Shahabi, music and culture. Is there any relationship?
Always. Culture created music, from folklore until techno. This is just a segment, part of our heritage as humans, regardless of what your taste is.
For our next segment, rhythm and tunes. And we're going to talk about a very controversial type of music, which is hip hop. You ready? Welcome back. And Shahabi, hip hop. How did it start?
I think it started back in the 70s in New York, if I'm not mistaken. But it wasn't a pleasant start, per se. A lot of people disagreed.
Why? But like, is it start with a certain segment of the population? Tell me.
It came out of the ghetto, let's say, for example. It's an expressive, a little bit harsh, cold, violent,
Offensive.
in a lot of areas. It's just like the Dada movement. It doesn't care about the element of what should be said or what should be done. So they just do what they feel like it because it's the most honest form of expression.
You think so? Like hip hop?
It comes from an angry
So it comes from like
frustration. So a lot of it talks about the struggle of life, about the hardship, especially it comes from, and what paved the way is the African American artist who.
So that's what I like. So it started with African American artists, and what I recall whenever I think about hip hop, it seems like a male-dominated industry.
As far as I know,
At least the beginnings.
in the beginning, and it did not get so much light in the beginning because the 70s.
So it's underground, of course. Yeah,
underground,
anything.
especially in the 70s, rock was booming. Was
But Reich is predominantly a white.
Exactly. Other than rock, you have the blues music, which is preferably for, let's say, African American populations. Blues is their go-to, blues and jazz. So the popular choice were blues and jazz, and blues and jazz are classy, melancholic.
That does not reflect the environment that
they did. There's always a tale behind this ballad or that song, but it wasn't violent.
So when we're speaking hip hop, when I think hip hop, there's a variety of different music. But what goes under actually that hip hop? What categories or what type of music?
Several ones, but I think the most prominent one and the most famous and which created the most controversy is rap music. Rap music, it peaked higher in the 80s, and then I think it became global.
But that was also at the beginning was predominantly like black music and male only. And I remember the 90s is when female got into it. And I think at the end of the 90s, it also turned, it became not just black, it's like black and white with Eminem, but I'm not sure when.
Eminem broke the, let's say,
the stereotype.
The stereotype.
That it's just a black.
It's just black music, and he was ridiculed. But I think he was good enough to reply that music doesn't care about your ethnic background or your race, regardless. Good music is good music, that's it.
But you mentioned, now when you're saying this, I recall watching the movie of 8 Mile, the Eminem movie.
Yeah.
And there's something interesting about it is too, like it might be offensive, it might be using like harsh language, if you will, but what I found is it created a medium where there's contests, where instead of using guns, they're now at least it's art.
And noting that in the 80s and the 90s, a lot of the artists were associated with crime. A lot of them had their own, let's say, syndicate. I'm not gonna say mob. I'm gonna say like they're associated with these kind of entourage, and that's like the natural way of things between most of them. So that gave also another perspective for the outsiders. So this is very violent music, and it's very harsh, and it's being run by gangsters.
But when do you think that changed, where like it had more acceptance?
I think.
So I know, like as you mentioned, it started from New York, and then over time it moved to the West Coast. Do you think that?
Maybe personally, there is no study on where it peaked, but personally, I think it's after the death of Tupac Shakur. Because Tupac,
California.
was more deep, and he tackled more issues in a much more intellectual way, and he was very intellectual.
I remember he's a good writer too.
He's
like,
a good writer.
Music is good.
His lyrics are very accurate, regardless of some of them might be a bit violent, but he composed, let's say, beautiful natural music that even a person who doesn't like rap or hip hop would appreciate that song. Yeah, like in Kuwait, for example, Dear Mama boomed in the 90s, and that was, I think, the first significant rap hit that broke the market locally. After that, it paved the way.
So you think it's Tupac that really?
Yes, that paved the way. That because we always appreciate the artists after they die. Okay, so since we were speaking about rap music, did you know that we used to have rap contest when I was a kid? Yeah.
You rap?
We used to challenge each other who would know the lyrics of Gangsta Paradise more.
Do you remember anything?
Now, no. Unfortunately, I would have gave you some sort of my magic back then, but no. The contest
So you're chickening out, basically.
I'm chickening out because I had a lot of McChicken back then. Whoever wins, and we used to.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah, whoever wins, we used to buy him the cheeseburger, 150 fils.
I had breakdancing contests when I was a kid too. Tu parles français?
Moi?
Oui?
Moi?
Oui?
Oui, Seigneur.
So for our next segment, let's talk some French.
Bonsoir, je m'appelle Abdelkarim Moumen, enseignant de la langue française au Koweït. J'ai été fasciné par la langue française depuis mes études secondaires. For today's episode, we are going to give you some information about some of the most important aspects of the French culture, so let's begin. France is one of the most beautiful tourist destinations, not in Europe only, but in the world. The capital, Paris, hosts millions of tourists every year. But it's not the only interesting city in France. There is also cities like Marseille, Lyon, Bordeaux, Annecy, and other cities are also remarkably beautiful. France is officially known as the French Republic. It is founding member of the European Union. It rose in the 19th and early 20th century to become the second largest colony empire in the 1950s, after the Great British Empire. It is also one of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council. Paris is the capital of France. Its histories go back to the 3rd century. It was started by a Celtic tribe called Parisi. They are called also les Gaulois in French. Paris currently is the largest city in terms of population. It has been influential for over 2,000 years, becoming a center of science and European art. It covered many political events, the most permanent of which was the French Revolution, or La Révolution Française. It home to many ancient and theoretical landmarks such as la Tour Eiffel, le Musée du Louvre, l'Arc de Triomphe, et Versailles, the Palace of Versailles, and several historical castles. French is the official language of the country, but there is a regional language about which we will talk later. The franc was the currency of the country until 1999, when it was replaced by the European currency, l'euro. Next time we will talk in details about some important French culture topics, and we will also learn French. See you soon et à bientôt.
For our next segment, my favorite, books, book clubs. And we have a really famous and popular book by a lady named Rhonda Byrne named The Secret.
For a moment, I was afraid they're going to say it's one of my favorite books.
Well, I know it's not your favorite book, but what do you know about the book?
Well,
Do you think it should be on the bestseller?
what I know is that it was released not a while ago, maybe 15 years ago or something. And it promoted the idea that this book, based on the title, it has the secret.
It will solve all of your problems.
All your marriage, work, finance, sleep, everything. It's gonna solve every single problem you have.
But I think there's a good part to the book too.
Which is, surprise me.
So just to give you an idea, the book is all about the law of attraction. If you think about something strong enough, you can achieve it. The problem is a lot of people, they stopped at that. So they thought if I just think about something, it will materialize. And that's wrong. That's where there is a part where you think about it, but you actually have to do. And I think that's what's missing is the action part of the book.
Yeah, the book doesn't state any action. That's the thing. The book just narrates about this.
I think you're losing weight just talking about that now.
Exactly. That's the only benefit I'm getting from that book. So it talks about actions that people did, but it doesn't tell you anything. So it's like a simple, non-illustrated history book that has nothing to do with history, and it have no solution.
But you know, Shahabi, just like anything in life, we mentioned that like when we're talking about music, there's positive, like a knife. There's a good part to it, but if you misuse it, it could kill you. So the same thing too, like if people take certain things and literally, you know that one of my biggest pet peeves is, what is that one book that changed your life? And there isn't. There's a lot of books.
A lot of books, yeah.
Exactly.
Would you recommend it for a non-reader?
No. But I see that like there's some part of it that I think is
Which part? Tell me.
just like the law of attraction of thinking. But I think that people should really go further on it, and then actually there's acting behind it.
I have to give it to them. The only thing that I like is the cover. I mean,
I don't remember the cover.
it's made from a very good, fine paper. It's not illustrated. It actually has a scent.
But I will agree at you at one point. I remember like a few years ago, I was working and I had a guy that was working on my team, and I was teaching him goal setting. So like you have to put your goals and you have to read them all the time. And after a while, he's like, Ali, this doesn't work. You know, I want to quit. And it's like, why? He's like, I'm reading my goals like 10 times a day, but nothing's happening. I'm like, you're supposed to pick up the phone and call somebody. That's where most people fail, is the action behind it.
Why do they not? Most people want to take the action.
You know, most people, they think luck is a big thing. So they want to ignore that there's a lot of work and effort and to go before actual success. The only place that success comes before work is in the dictionary.
Exactly.
Work always comes before success.
Yeah, that's interesting. A lot of people ask me, why do I not endorse The Secret? I'm an avid book reader to an extent, and I like the whole psychology, sociology, the anthropology, every science of man's behavior. I'm fun with it. To understand a man or a woman, you have to really dig deep. You have to know what the issue is.
But let me ask you this. If somebody's not going to read anything at all, and they're going to be just one book, and they happen to read, do you think that's a waste of time? If they never read anything, they're not going to read anything, at least they read something.
It depends on the outcome. Will it scare them or give them an idea that this is just nonsense? Or will it make them read again?
So you have a good point. Not everything that I read is necessarily true, but a lot of times, a lot of what I read, I can learn and I gain, and it will impact my life. But just like what we talk about music, there's positive and negatives. You can take the good, you can leave the bad, the ugly, and good things happen.
Exactly. But I will still not endorse the book. I don't care.
So next week, we will choose another book that Shahabi likes. This is our segment, and we'll see you again. Shahabi, I know you're a movie buff, but I want to talk about theaters today. What is the impact of theater, and what kind of theaters are there on culture?
Locally, in culture, it's very important. That was the first act of pre-cinema times, the first dramatic acts. Yeah, exactly. So people used to watch other people acting or giving poetry.
Just curious, by the way, do you know anything about how theater started? I'm curious.
Not specifically, but I know
That's
the
right,
different
huh?
type of genre. Like Broadway, it's the most dominant one. The musical is the most common theme.
And what is common here in Kuwait?
Here it's dark comedy, and mostly it's a political satire. It's honest to an extent.
But you know, I've been to a lot of Broadway shows also, and what I noticed in Broadway, there's also a lot of theater that is not necessarily funny, but like when I think about theater in Kuwait, I think of a comedy.
Yeah, that's a predominant industry we have.
Here,
Yeah.
but not necessarily abroad.
No, abroad, no. Theater, usually it's more melancholic, more dramatic. Here it's more into a dark comedy and political satire.
No, like dark comedy, I think it's a lot lighter than dark.
To an extent, yeah. But when you mix social, politics, and funny and art, you're gonna get something dark and funny in the end.
We actually have a special report for you about theaters.
Theater, an institution as old as civilization itself, a global phenomenon, a cultural expression, and a commentary on history, society, religion, politics, commerce, love, and beyond. For the 2015-2016 Broadway season, there was a total attendance of over 13 million people, with a gross revenue of over $1.3 billion. But before we can understand the state of modern theater, we must first look to the past to understand its origin and evolution. Our journey begins in ancient Greece, between the years 384 to 322 BCE. The word theater is derived from the ancient Greek word theatron, which means a place for viewing. Ancient Greece was not without its own muse, as the Persian Empire, through its literature, arts, and philosophy, inspired much of ancient Greece's theatrical origin. Ancient Persia, the Sassanid period, so Roman theater basically copied Greek. They just made it much bigger and pompous. By the 5th century, Rome is falling apart. By this time, theater changes course and becomes more of a religious place, moral place, and it continues until 15th century. Here, theater faced a major roadblock: religion. Theater travels to Asia. Sanskrit theater. Chinese theater. The popular image of the Chinese dancing dragon. Japanese theater. Kabuki theater. no theater. The birth of Shakespeare. William Shakespeare, a poet, playwright, actor, producer. He was the best dramatist. Shakespeare produced 17 comedies and 12 tragedies, permanently changing the face of theater. Shakespeare also pioneered the genre of tragi-comedy, such as The Merchant of Venice. And to his credit, he wrote a lot of history theater. The Globe Theater. West End of London.
So what do you think about the content about the show, Shahabi?
I don't know. We have a very tough director. I mean, he was bossing us around, and I think he's gonna do a pay cut soon. So, what about you?
I think it's good, and I think there's more to come. And my goal is to have a book that you would like.
Well, you did not do something good today with the Secret. You actually told people that you should. There are good
I
things
have a
about it.
question for you. Why can't you see, like, there's anything good, there's something bad, and there's anything bad, there's something good. So
A lot of people get wowed. Like if it's, let's say Hitler. When you read...
yeah, but in Hitler, I can read something, I can learn what not to be. There's still something to learn about reading about something bad. Everything, even a bad book, there's a good, like if you read a bad, that's what a bad book should be. And so I know what it is, but at least I'm exposed to it.
But time is so valuable. You live once, you live once. Don't waste it on bad books or mediocre movies.
Yeah, but people waste their time on anything. And sometimes maybe that's more valuable than hitting the breeze, maybe.
Yeah, if it's like, let's say, a lesson or a borderline for you to upgrade your game, okay, that makes sense. But if you stay in that borderline for a long time...
Then we're talking, of course. But if it's that one, like, I always find something good in it.
Because I believe in the balance, in the yin and the yang.
Who believes in the balance? You?
Some sort. Unless if it's about food, I don't believe in any balance when it comes to that.
That's very obvious.